Hey, everybody, welcome back to HR Heretics. Today we have Casey Wu joining us. So, Casey's been a longtime friend, and he's one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And part of the reason why is his background. So, Casey went from a public market investor to a five-time exec at VC backed companies, either as a CFO, COO combo. Then you started Operators Guild, which is the best community for CFOs, COOs, and chief people officers. And then you parlayed Operators Guild into a VC firm. So, Casey, we're stoked to have you on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, we've known each other since, I tried to hire you at DoorDash and I've tried to hire you at Carta. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it done. You're my white whale. So one of these days we will work together. But there's a ton of things that we can talk about. I actually want to talk about WeWork. And you worked at WeWork during the heyday of crazy WeWork. And I just want to know, what was it like working with Adam Neumann?
So I think a little known random statistic I'm going to create out of thin air is 9 out of 10 WeWorkers would do it all over again. I think a lot of people confuse it with Theranos or like FTX. To be clear, WeWork was not a fraud. WeWork was a mismanaged financial thing with a great product. It lives today. So once again, not being defensive, but that's the first thing I think when people ask me about is there's this like, it's going to be this like fraudulent stories and all that. And no, it was one of the most special moments of my, what I call tours of duty as an operator. WeWork is a very rare situation where you got billions of dollars, literally, not figuratively, to build as fast as a human could build. I take it as one of the most incredible business school things paid for by someone else. Because when it comes to operating, one of the biggest variables of sophistication or skill level is rate of change and speed. I have a whole analogy where it's like there's Navy SEALs and there's people who like are not them. They're at a high stakes, no margin of error type of situation. It's a different type of war fighting. At WeWork, it's a different type of business building. So to be a part of that was just pretty awesome. Like, just like call it what it is. And you take away things from there at that type of speed, and you'd appreciate it from the hiring standpoint. It's like how Facebook, it got to a point where there's like hiring like 300 a month in one region, right? Across every function. So there's that. Now, your question wasn't that. Your question was, Adam, every founder, their DNA bleeds through the culture. Doesn't matter how big it is. Travis, so you can see the aggressiveness, right? Steve Jobs, is the product quality in the market. It doesn't matter. Elon, the technology element of things. Adam was the social energy. People joke that we were a cult. I think there's a fine line between, the cult in the negative sense and the energy that rallies a group together to do something. He's probably one of the most magical storytellers I've ever met. I could listen to one thing, he can get on stage and completely change my mind about the thing I just saw. So he has an incredible ability to rally, storytell, like all really, really good salespeople, marketers, leaders. It's an incredible trait. You don't want to be on the other side of the fundraising table of that guy. All your money out of your pocket will be gone, right? He really is an incredible, just get you going. That's what a lot of the energy was like working there. There was also like what we call in global headquarters, New York, and then in the regions. In New York, where he was, it's like getting close to the sun. It's hot. There's a lot of executive stuff, fundraising that I was not a part of. I was the CFO of Western US and Canada. So I had a lot of the fun building without a lot of the, I would say, corporate stuff. Eventually, I was moved over to the global team to be head of strategic finance. But the other first part was being a regional leader, where we were just given the money to go build. So that was really fun. I do remember one time with Adam, he sat down and it was the first time we ever met. And he goes, my CEO or CWEO, we have multiple CEOs of the regions, CWEO, said, "Hey, Adam, this is Casey. He's the new CFO." And we've actually met in the past, a long time ago. He doesn't remember this. But anyways, we shake hands and he looks at me and he goes, "You ready to be in charge of a $2 billion P&L?" We were only like, 50 million or something then. But he talks like a visionary. He's like, "You ready to be," which is very addicting, by the way. It's a very big adrenaline rush. What I've learned is he's Israeli. So there's a culture that I've learned is that they're very direct with you. And I think closeness is directness. So I remember saying a line where I said, no, I've never run a $2 billion P&L, but have you ever run a $20 billion company? And then he gave a nod because we're both new at this. And so there was a kind of a fun respect of, all right, you're okay, let's go. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that he pushed us extremely hard. And that's the other thing I talk about is he would say, we're going to regionalize the P&Ls one day. Just literally, that takes like 6 months. He's like, you got till Monday. And we're like, wait, is he joking? He's like, I don't think he's joking. And at first we whine about it. It's very similar to West Point. So I went to the military. What they do is they give you 1 minute miles and everyone's like, not possible. And what happens is you don't make the 1 minute mile, but you all of a sudden break 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you never knew it was possible. So working with him is an adrenaline rush because the camaraderie gets so tight. We got to do it. We didn't make Monday, but we made Friday. Didn't think that was possible. So anyways, and there's a lot. And look, it's a party culture. You can call it party, you can call it socialize, whatever you want. Part of our job was to socialize at community events. Yep. There was the summer retreat where Red Hot Chili Peppers was mandatory. HR had bracelets that said, you need to check in. It's part of your job. And so, yeah, it's a time I'll never forget.
Yeah, that experience must have been so freaking hard and equally rewarding at the same time. I mean, you mentioned before I back off WeWork, you mentioned it was kind of like a business school course. What would you tell the audience, Casey, the two lessons, that you do it again, that you learn to do, and then maybe a one that you wouldn't do again based on that course?
Well, I think the lesson that is not secret is the laws of economics are like physics. I think Warren Buffett said, in the long run, in the short run, the stock is a voting machine. And in the long run, it's a weighing machine. So for me, it was while we were getting a lot of money at big valuations, I remind a lot of CFOs or anyone in business, the laws of economics pertain to every single business in the world, which is, so one of the things I ask people is whatever you raise money, you say how much was raised. Okay, whatever that is. And then you ask yourself, how long will it last us? Okay, say whatever, call it 12 months. And then you take the valuations, the second question. So what was your, and then you say at normalized levels of multiples going public, let's say, how many years would it take or how long would it take doubling or tripling to achieve that valuation? And if the first answer is 12 months of runway and the second answer is 7 years, there's going to be a disconnect somewhere and there's no free valuation. So that's where it's very tricky at high growth is the staging and the art of fundraising. There's a whole debate over just because you can raise at a certain value, do you? There's a lot of debate around that. Dilution, whatever. I mean, Adam's doing just fine right now. So is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. But there's obviously costs to be had. in all sorts of ways. Equity, shares, retention, the board, there's a whole bunch of things. So I think that is a huge reminder of setting valuations strategically. I'm not saying they didn't, but there's just, there's a trade-off depending on which way you want to go. And you just own that. The second is a general thing, which is I do think in general, I've seen companies when you go into hyper growth where you have a lot of resources, the tendency is to not be as ruthlessly prioritized. So I wrote an article about like a lot of people think the solution is hiring more people. I've been in the opposite. I've been in companies that are about to, they're tooth and nail, like every penny is going to matter rather than let's go crazy and scale the world. Very, very different. So culturally, how you fundraise impacts actions in a massive way. So growth at all costs is a very different culture that all of us will succumb to. It doesn't matter who you are versus the opposite of that, right? You just bootstrap. And so take the extreme. And you can see the behaviors change. Where all of a sudden, some people who thought they needed 10 people have one and still get it done. Same person, just so there's a little bit of that learning is when I'm in good times, I tell myself and remind myself, just because we can doesn't mean we're going to spend it. Just doesn't mean it actually keep it tight because it also taught me what's possible without. So that's a different company. But also when you can start to suspect very quickly when you see that, let's come up with new projects. Let's go do all this other stuff. Add on priorities. I need a chief of staff and you need a chief of staff. Oh, you smell it.
Yep.
And so it's one of those like, this is a memory where we need to resist even though we can and everyone's saying, okay.
Yep. A lot more people doing stuff, less stuff actually getting done.
It's basically restricted resources forces innovation.
Constraints breed innovation.
Yeah. So I experienced the opposite. Don't get me wrong. We innovated a lot, but there's also just a lot of areas where we are duplicating stuff.
Yep. That makes sense.
Because we're moving at speed. So the other thing is speed actually costs money. Going really fast, actually, there's a break glass. So they call it a growth tax. So if you want to go really fast, it could be, I need more assistants and you need more salespeople because you're just throwing bodies at it, so to speak. So there is an interesting equation where sometimes going faster costs more. It's a little bit counterintuitive. I think those are the lessons I've learned. There's more, but that's, I think, the big ones.
What a time to be there. And, I don't know if we'll ever see those times again. Probably never. But, Adam going and raising all that money from Masa, I just don't know if we're ever going to see again. And so that actually brings me to my next question, which is around Operators Guild. So you have a community of, 800, 850 elite operators. These are some of the best people in tech. What are they saying about the current climate?
I'll probably blend a little bit of AI into this as well. But number one is we went through a very clear phase of cutting back. So the mindset swings heavily, as we've seen in cycles, from go, go, go. I know that at WeWork, to less is more, less is more, do more with less, do more with less, to the point where it's become ingrained now. Like before it was a reaction, like we need to cut. I think it's extended to the point where it becomes badge of honor, becomes a thing, becomes a mindset. I don't think for bad, but is a lot of founders, et cetera, operators realizing what they can do with less. Kind of what I talked about in terms of when you get real bootstrapped, you'll be surprised what you can do. So I think in a good way, that's kind of here to stay a little bit, is the reminder of, do we really need that? Oh my God, we don't have them and we're okay. So that's happened. Someone was talking about today about how the consulting market is ghost town. That's kind of interesting because I think the hiring market is slowly picking up. So I know agencies that went from, 2 positions a month to now 8.
Yep, that's right.
So right there, you're like, okay, like leading indicator happening. But why is the consulting market? And I think it's because instead of 4 HR people, we can get by with 2, right? So there's that. Then the other thing is AI. AI also, I think, fuels the efficiency mind, right? It gives everyone this mindset of how awesome would it be to not hire ever and like triple productivity, right? Which is what the promise of AI. So I think the struggle is the people that are looking for jobs, right? It's like you're competing with people that are very cautious with getting back into overspend and spending a lot of time going to their board thinking about how they're going to promote some AI thing that will save them even more people costs. And it is true. AI, the number one area I've seen is customer support.
Tell us what you're seeing.
So there's a company I will leave unnamed, but I think they had something like 700 people in customer support. Now they have 35.
Wow.
Oof.
And the 35 left are mostly all what I call cross-functional operators. They're not the more verticalized specialists. And that's my belief, is the next phase of operations is highly skilled, multidisciplined, strategic, takes in decisions from a lot of places, makes a call, translation sentient. And less so, I have a skill set in call center management or sales and that's the first indicator of that. Who kept their jobs and who lost their jobs, so to speak. And then the other side is, so there's people outside looking for jobs. And then there's people inside that have jobs working with AI. Their challenge will be the risks of AI. So everyone's under the gun to bring some AI efficiency.
Yep.
Every board is expecting some initiative. And so the talks are going to be trade-offs. We are going to try this AI. The risks are as follows. One company was in travel, and AI started hallucinating and spitting off travel that didn't exist. Okay, well, that's a risk. And so there's innovations within operations for these operators of, say, the market of a whole new set of skills. By the way, do you guys know how they solved it? How the AI hallucinated? They got another AI to be its boss.
Oh, incredible.
So what happens is if both hallucinate, it's probably real, or it's not. It's very unlikely they hallucinate identically. So we're, as operators, we're starting to become very advanced, or not advanced. We're evolving on the AI dynamics, but it's basically like Iron Man. You're a human inside a machine. So that's what I think it is. I don't think it's like we get replaced. I think we get Iron Man suits.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
Here's a crazy stat. Between hybrid and frontline employees, about 80% don't typically work in an office. So it's no surprise that digitally engaging employees is the number one concern for CEOs as companies go hybrid. But as hybrid is quickly becoming the norm, it's easy for workplaces to start feeling a little less human. Yet delighting a digital workforce is possible, and it can even be, dare we say, fun. That's where WorkVivo, Zoom's employee experience platform, comes in. If you've ever recoiled at the thought of a static intranet that looks like something you built in 1995 using MS Paint, have no fear. WorkVivo is a dynamic, intuitive, accessible, and mobile-first tool. People actually like using it, which is why companies like Ryanair, Dollar General, Virgin, and more have rolled it out to hundreds of thousands of employees. WorkVivo's activity feeds, spaces, shoutouts, and live streams, among other features, help elevate the employee experience like never before. The result? Dramatically better retention, productivity, and most importantly, connectedness. A greater sense of the belonging we all crave at work, whether we sit at a desk or drive a truck. Make WorkVivo the digital heart of your organization and achieve limitless human connection. Head to workvivo.com to book a demo and make sure you tell them that Nolan and Kelli from HR Heretics sent you. There's a world where your CRM is powerful, easily configured, and deeply intuitive. Attio makes that a reality. Attio is a radically new CRM built specifically for the new era of companies. It's flexible, easily configures to your unique data structures, works for any go-to-market motion from self-serve to sales-led. Attio automatically enriches your contacts, syncs your emails and calendar, lets you create powerful reports, and quickly build Zapier-style automations. The next era of companies deserves more than a one-size-fits-all CRM with an outdated UX. Join 11 labs, replicate, modal, and more. Try Attio instantly at attio.com. That's ATTIO.com and tell them Nolan and Kelli from HR Heretics sent you.
Yes, I think we have to coexist as well. It's a matter of how and what pace and whatnot. And that's my question. I mean, do you think we're going too fast on the AI route? The companies you work with, your community. I mean, are we kind of overdoing it on the pace here?
The answer is yes. And the answer is it will not stop. Someone taught me something really interesting. He's a technologist. He goes, mankind has a pattern. I'll never forget this. It was like, oh, what's it going to, he goes, it's the same pattern always in mankind is we innovate on something that's very powerful and we unleash it into the world. But many times we can't control it. And there's massive good and massive bad. Example, the car, the combustion engine, massive good, climate change problems. Once it's out, man runs with it, good and bad. The second was the nuclear bomb. That technology stopped a war, has a lot of bad, has a lot of good. Can't stop it. Once the cat is out of the bag, literally man just runs with it. Another one is social media, which is considered a digital nuclear bomb. Now there's people in their homes making so much money, empowered as business owners because they can do that. And there's others that we got suicide and mental illness in high schools. Another mega bomb of power that no one person or country can control. It's the same thing. And now you have AI. Same. It's going to be used for massive good and cure cancer. And then also God knows what frauds and scary things are happening. That is the exact same thing that's going to happen, except on 10x greater magnitude and speed.
I think it's very wise. And I'm still surprised the number of people that have chosen either the good or the bad only. Because the right answer is it's freaking both.
Yeah.
And pick whatever you want, political issues, this, that, stances. It usually is always a mix of both. Like, why can't we logically and reasonably, my reasonable brain says it's going to be good and it's going to be bad. So let's all work together to mitigate the cons and reap the pros. But I still see so many people picking bad or good podcasts, beliefs. Why is that?
My take on this, Kelli, is because we're displacing the existing order. And that displacing is uncomfortable, unsettled, and we don't know what the future holds. So like Casey mentioned, I think it was Klaviyo who had come out in their most recent earnings report and said that they had cut their customer support team by 70% and replaced it with AI. And this is after, you're hearing like a bunch of VCs like Mark Andreessen, for example, being like, oh, we're over indexing on how this is going to be bad for people and how we're going to lose jobs.
He's one of the ones I thought of.
Yeah. And I actually think we are going to lose a lot of jobs, but I think there's going to be this delta between where we are today and this like more future utopia thing that like is really ugly for a lot of people. Casey, what's your take?
This goes in the line with what this technology was telling me is before Uber, everyone's like, all these people are going to lose their jobs as taxi drivers. And I don't know the stats. I don't know, but somehow everyone found new income. And in fact, I think the study was more jobs were created due to that. So I'm a little bit of an optimist, which is they're going to change, but there could be more job creation in a different way. Maybe this time's different. So, but historically, technology has actually been a job creator, is what I've been told, not a job destroyer. But yes, I think there's people who are used to be customer support that are like, whoa, I need to probably apply my skills doing something else. So that's my short answer to a very complicated question, is that humans adapt. And it's not going to be like we have all these homeless people that can't afford, it's something's going to more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, that's just kind of a very high level answer, but really it seems that way every time.
Yeah.
There is a struggle. Do not get me wrong. There are people that are, but there's something new gets created from the displaced.
I think your Uber taxi example actually hit home for me. I think that's right as far as the adaptation.
Yep. But it is painful in the short term.
Because of the unknown, mostly.
Yeah. And again, like you had taxi drivers that are like, okay, I now have to compete with this app. And that is, and especially in New York, to pull this right a little bit further, like these taxi medallions were like $800,000 or $1 million. Like people had put their entire life savings into doing this. And then all of a sudden Uber comes in and rips that out. And it does get to a stasis eventually, but I think the short term is where we are right now, is it's a new technology. Casey, you have a take on the rise of the operator. Can you explain to our audience what that is?
Yes. So I served some time in the military, so you'll see some military analogies. Then I became an economics major at undergrad and was told there was 2 steps to nirvana. Step 1 is go to an island called Manhattan and get a banking job at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. And okay, so I went to Morgan Stanley. It was amazing. And the second and last step is get a hedge fund or private equity job. Hold on to it for 10, 15 years and retire. Have you ever seen The Big Short? It works. The Big Short I like because for those of you who've seen it and are not familiar with public equity investing is, and I'll say it, it's a little controversial, it's lonely. If you look at Michael, a lot of it is the adrenaline of the money. 99%, as I was in a beautiful corner office overlooking Central Park, lonely and not happy.
Mm.
What I'm saying is I learned that I'm an operator. And what does that mean? I say this after 40,000 hours later of doing operations, interviewing 1,200 operators and accidentally building the Operators Guild, which is there is a bunch of us born a certain way. I strongly believe it. It's like a dog. You're a hunting dog. You see the puppy hunting dog running around chasing something. It's in our nature. And what I mean by that, there is a persona in the world that loves to build. I was one of them. And you find out what that is when you put us into a place where it's transactional and advisory, audit, banking, investing, law firm. Nothing wrong with those professions. They're generally transactional advisory. The McKinsey partner. So what happened is I left, joined a 10-person startup and loved it so much in Silicon Alley that I moved to Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, I walked into a little company. I probably can't name it, but it's probably the most successful startup of our generation, of not second. They had about 60 people. They are very tech first. The recruiter said to me, I started off with saying, I will work here for free. I've heard everything about it. There were about 60 people at the time. Now they're worth about 50 billion. And they asked me 2 questions. They go, do you sell? I go, no. Do you code? No. Then get out. I was like, but I do this thing called finance and operations. They go, oh, finance. Okay. Do you have a CPA? No. Okay. Then definitely get out because everyone in the finance department is a CPA. He goes, you don't qualify for finance here. I was like, I don't qualify for finance here. All I've done for the last 10 years is a word called finance. Finance in New York is the shit. Finance in Silicon Valley is shit. You're probably going to censor that one. But my point is, that was 12 years ago. and I'm getting to the rise of the operator, which is, I am literally one of those stories, except now I just found out that there's many of us. So if you're following the story, basically, I try to join all these communities because I'm so lonely here. I joined a CFO community. No offense. It wasn't my fit. Let me just leave it at that. It just for some reason I didn't feel like I was that we were the same type of breed. And then I joined COO, CEO communities, charming storytellers, visionaries, but not a lot of numbers. I'm obviously being facetious right here, but basically there was this extreme, and I was like, those are not either of me. And so then 9 people, almost I think 10 years to this day, got together for a lunch meeting that I was invited to. And I said, oh my God, I feel you people. There's like finance, ops. I said, hey, do you guys want to start a little mom and dad's group for operators where we just help each other? I had 5 rules from the lessons I've learned elsewhere. And that 9 became almost 900 after 10 years. I think OG is one of the only communities in the world that has ever grown 100x organically. We don't have a single sales dollar ever. So the rise of the operator was this, I fell upon it, which is now I'm working full-time-ish, Operators Guild. Until then, I was a 5-time, 6-time CO, CFO. So I've been in the trenches. All along the way, I've interviewed 1,200 people for this group. I know operators really, really well. That's all I've done. And then all of a sudden, all my history with them, something clicked. The CFO of brand name, I won't say it here, joined. The COO of brand name just joined. We don't have a salesperson. It literally has been word of mouth. We've gone from 1 city to 20. London just opened up. I'm telling you, it literally just keeps going by itself to the point where I'm full-time now trying to run it. The universe has pulled me into this and has pulled it into existence. So that's called what we call reverse product market fit. So then I have to ask a question. I'll see if you guys get it. And it's the inspiration for this air quote book I'm trying to write with another operator. I asked what demographics are in the Operators Guild. There's 4 title personas in the group. Remind you, it's a paid community where people come and go based on their dollars. There is no sales or customer retention program. This is literally come and go, word of mouth. So it is literally the most organic heirloom tomato growing in the backyard you could possibly believe. So I'm asking the universe, what and why has this group created? I'll give you some facts about the group. We have 4 title personas, director and above. Number 1 is finance. CFO, finance. Number 2, COO ops. Head of ops, customer ops. Number 3, special ops, rev ops, chief of staff, biz ops, strategy. Basically, almost no teams, internal ninjas or consulting. And number 4, heads of business unit, general manager, early CEO, founder. We also have 235 unique titles across 800. That is the highest unique title ratio to members of probably any community in the world. Why in the world, I want to ask you guys, it took me 9.5 years to get this. So if it's 20 seconds, don't worry. Why would a chief of staff be with the founder, be with a big time CFO, the CEO, a head of customer ops, a general manager, a strategist, and they keep choosing to renew in this group and not a chief of staff group, a CFO group, a CEO group? I keep asking why. And then it hit me. And that was the inspiration of the book. What do you guys think it is?
I mean,
cross-functional business problems.
Yeah. So tailored to that, my answer would be because that makeup of those people in that community, that's how they live. Those are the people you have to work with to build these businesses correctly. And I'm going to ask you a tough one is how come HR operators aren't in there, or what's the deal? But that you don't build an organization by working with just fellow CEOs or just chiefs of staff. You have to replicate that leadership team.
HR can be in there. They're absolutely cross-functional. It's because HR was such a supported community already.
Right.
And so defined. Legal too. So I think legal and HR are also very highly, but they're actually they can be very specialized too. So there's this world that but a lot of us have people ops in us or have led people. So the answer is it's a blurry line. Yeah, the answer is we're business builders. We're generalists. So the biggest message I have is titles have completely screwed us. Hey, what do you want to do next? I'm a 2-time COO, so I'm going to do COO again. Why? What's a COO? Well, no, that's your definition. There is 1,700 definitions. Okay, chief of staff, what are you going to do? Then the question that we have that's most difficult to answer, we as a persona, I speak on behalf of literally all the people I've interviewed and like we relate. What do you do? And you guys are in people, you know what recruiting looks like. I need a specialty answer coming out of you right now because I'm not going to hire a generalist. Oh, okay, I'm going to play the part. I do finance, I can do public stuff, I do analytics. Can I get a CFO job? Yes, you are a CFO. So we walk in there and guess what we do when we get in? We do way more than CFO.
Oh, yeah.
So the person who joined the big time CFO, I said, hey, why did you join us and not a CFO group? And this was the best answer. And we both answered it because we're not CFOs. That Nolan is not a people officer in my mind. He's a badass business builder who happens to have a discipline called people. I can build businesses. My discipline is called finance. So to finish off this cheesy analogy here, in the United States Armed Forces, there's Army, Navy, and Air Force. Pretty clear what they do. They're specialists, just like sales, engineering, and marketing. If you say you're sales, that is your title, your function, your department, and your skill set. You're good to go in this world. Even HR has that. I mean, I'm people. But people is obviously much more complicated. But lawyer, got it. Engineering, got it. Me or Nolan? I'm not sure where to begin. Founder, right?
Yep.
So why in the world would the US government spend billions on a program called Navy SEALs? Just send in the Army or the Navy and get it done. It's no different. There are certain missions in life, certain situations that require generalists. They're, funny enough, called special operations warfare. What I've realized about OG is we are special operations business building. It is extremely high paced. For us, high stakes, not real life and death. For them, it is. For us, it's bankruptcy, right? The death of a business. But at that type of speed and lethality, where I was at a company burning $100 million a month, that is a different business than most, right? So the stakes and everything are so different. That is the rise of this elite operator class. You drop us in, we can't help ourselves. We start to just blend into the whole thing and just fix problems.
Solve problems. Henry Eckhart has said this. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned it, Casey, of I've never thought about it from the lens of why titles have created this problem. Henry's take on it was, why do we have job descriptions? We should have problem descriptions.
Bingo.
We should just tell people what problems to solve versus like throwing them into this box to where the title ends up defining them.
And if you look at the best, like the best operators, whether it's legal, to your point, legal, HR, finance, RevOps, like the conversations they're having in an interview process, let's say, they're the same fucking conversations. I mean, maybe you touch on a hit of flavor of the discipline, but the conversation you're having is about the business and how to build, solve it.
People ask me, how do I know I'm hiring the right CFO or CPO? Or I said, if their questions are about business, you got a good one.
Yeah.
If their questions are about very tactical, specific specialty things, well, they're going to be less of a leader executive, in my opinion, and more of a specialist. But you nailed it, Nolan.
Totally.
Like, we are skill-based, not title-based. Yeah. So I'll finish off my little cheesy analogy, which is, I don't know if people know, but Navy SEALs have disciplines. It's called sniper, medic, radio and comms. They're specialized in special things, but you don't call them a medic. You call them a SEAL. It's no different in our world. Nolan's just a business builder to me. Some people call him, chief business officer, people officer, or something like that. No. he just happens to be a specialist in that area. And if you need that, he's a great person to have on the team. So that's the world I see operators now, is stop calling yourself by your title. That's just one of your majors and minors that you bring to the table. So the future of operators, you start collecting majors. Like, I want to take a class on RevOps.
Right.
So the majors are strategic finance, data analytics, org culture, dealing with narcissists, fundraising, business intelligence, pricing and packaging. That are the problem sets.
Yep.
And then there is sales, engineering. That's fair. Like, those are very clear problem sets who happen to be vertical. No issue there. But there's a whole set of orthogonal that's been hiding in plain sight, that people broke into things called chief of staff.
Yeah.
Biz ops.
Yep.
The answer is they do all the same thing. We just jump to the next hole or gap.
Yep.
We are specialists at being generalists.
Yeah. Casey, you said you accidentally got a PhD in communities and love the journey with the Operators Guild. What would you tell the audience about communities these days? Because it has kind of blown up in a good way, paid, unpaid, et cetera. I know you have views on that, or advice.
I think people may have forgotten that a community is based on relationships. I think some people confuse it with just, what I like to say is, do not confuse friendships with memberships. If you actually double click into friendship and look into the equation, one of the biggest variables is called time. I bet you there's no friend of yours that's close that you haven't had time with. Time elapse. Best friends generally are childhood best friends. You've gone through everything together. They cannot become a best friend generally unless time has happened. You marry that with people trying to build a business with community. They're like, let's go now. So one of the issues is people focus too much on the business of community, and they force friendships. I think community is a compounding time game, YPO. 40 years, 50 years, one of the most successful communities in the world. Could not be done in 4 years. You can take their whole playbook. You're not going to build it that way. I think communities, I mean, of course, there have been communities built, but it's just, that's a very big one, is the balance between 3xing your friends by Monday.
Yep.
And going super, super slow, right? I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, because you got to have to like feed the organization. So do not forget about the people shortcut, basically, is a big one about community. And the other one's relevance. It sounds so obvious. You need to be hyper relevant. OG was accidentally hyper relevant because there was no community for generalists. Zero. No one in their right mind says, I'm going to create a generalist community. That makes no sense. But the answer is, we exist. We are actually a community that we didn't know. Alcoholics Anonymous, New Moms Group, military and SEALs, what do they share in common? Hardship, being understood, and relevance. And those are some of the most successful communities in the world: the military, the moms groups, and Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's no different. So if you're going to create a community, it better be very hyper relevant and understandable, and it has a hardship element, I think. Don't get me wrong, not everything has to be hardship, but let me tell you, building companies at our scale and getting tossed out every 18 months is a very special hardship that we only understand.
Especially if you're early stage, you don't really have a lot of other people that you can lean on inside of your company, yet other people have solved the problem before. And I think that's really, for me, that the value of the community is, when we have a problem, I can't go to somebody in my company because they haven't seen this problem before either. We're experiencing it for the first time. And that's where you can, lean on communities like OG and just lob your question in. And the next thing you know, you have like 20 people who have done this multiple times to give different angles so you can form your own.
Bingo.
Casey, do you ever miss operating? That's one of my last questions for you.
I haven't had a chance to miss it because OG is building on steroids. See, what I didn't realize was, this goes back to like titles and stuff. I'm building OG. Just like I'd be building another company under a W-2.
There you go. Uh-huh.
I'm still hunting like a hunting dog. it just looks under like a different tax structure or a different, like whatever. I'm called founder or CEO. But this is my point. Whether I was a CFO or a CEO or a founder or whatever, I was chief of staff, I was biz ops, I carried all of them. It's just problem solving. But I will say for operators, I do think there's a world where we move to founding. Like I think founding a business, it is the ultimate autonomy building, high stakes adrenaline rush, and it's your baby. So I think all operators after a while, when they go to, am I going to be a 7-time CFO? A 19-time COO?
Mm-hmm.
I see this all day long. Eventually, I say, why do you need to always name your title into it?
It's a really interesting. So what I hear from you, yeah, I love your energy and like it's palpable.
Yeah.
The story I used to tell myself, and it sounds like you told yourself a similar story, was like, I'll grind for like 10 to 15, 20 years, and then I'll be able to retire. And I don't hear any sense of you like wanting to slow down. Have you gone through that change in your career arc of like, you told yourself the story of like, yeah, like retirement is like, 45, 50 and I'm good to go. I don't sense that that's where you are today.
No, because like you, I'm just going to throw you into the equation. It really is oh my God, my flesh is do what you love. It really is the whole, like, if you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the difference, and this is part of the air quote book, is I want to tell all my operator friends, all my generalist buddies out there, to have confidence. It's scary. Leaving the home of a big company or corporation and just doing your own thing is scary. But what you need to remember is what we've been trained at, whether we like it or not, is business building. Like we are some of the best at it because of what we had to go through. There's nothing stopping you from doing your own thing. I'm not saying doing your own thing is better or worse, but you don't have this singular track of whatever title you were called. So to everyone listening out there, open up the horizon. Because I think there's one difference between like classic founders and us. There's a little bit of ego. I'm going to say it. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of visionary that you kind of need to just do it. It's a really hard thing. And I think a lot of operators are a little too self-regulated. They're too analytical and like, I don't know. And they're like doing the trade-offs because that's what we're good at. We analyze. It stops us.
And there's a lot to lose though. There's a lot to lose. Like their tech salaries are very real.
There's a lot.
100%.
Yeah.
And so we're a little too calculated. And so we sometimes need a little push on the other side, which is that variable called, what am I giving? What am I gaining to give up? It could be gaining huge things, but you have to have a little confidence of like, I can build and figure it out. And I got some chops to do it. And if I don't know, I know who to hire. That's the other power of an operator. We find the right teams and that becomes invincible. If you think about it, if you can build any team, you can solve anything. You look at Elon, build a freaking space company for God's sakes. And then a car company. He knows how to assemble the teams or get their. So he's like an ultimate business builder, right? So yeah, I think that's my biggest message to everyone is I haven't left operating, but there is the whole like hang your own shingle or do something a little more, oh my gosh, it's all me. And there's nothing wrong at all. I mean, I think about it going back. I do think investing could be something interesting to help operators for me is if I go into the VC world, I can bring capital to the game. I think the next level for operators is capital and founding stuff.
Yep. I love it. Casey Wu, this was a masterclass. Yeah. Thanks so much for the time, man.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.